It's setting up, but it usually goes live. So just a second.
It is live.
Oh, it is live. Okay, perfect. So here we are. Here in Deeply Connected Group, in relationship conversation, I have Federica Latta today with us. She's a licensed psychologist. She used to work in the US for a long time, now living in Italy, working with a lot of American clients and Italian clients too, right? In Italy
Yes,
mostly. Okay.
absolutely.
Yeah, all of it, all of it.
And also
Okay.
a lot of
Ex-
expats that prefer therapy in English than in
mm-hmm.
Italian because maybe they're not so fluent in Italian.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Makes sense. And mostly individuals or couples? What's the
I would say mostly individuals, but also a lot of
a
couples.
lot of couples? Uh-huh. Uh-huh. And so we wanted to talk about communication today because that's one of the things I get a lot of like people, when I ask the question to join the group, I ask like, what's your most common issue with the relationship? And a lot of people, most people would say communication. And it sounds like that's what you also see as well. That people come
Yes,
in. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
absolutely, because I really think that we are not really prepared to have communication, especially with the people that we love. We are not educated to the communication problems and
mm-hmm,
communication issues. And so I think that that's really an area where a lot of people struggle.
mm-hmm. And you also mentioned, and I love that because that's also resonates with my experience that sometimes people, or like oftentimes people present it as communication, but the issues go deeper. But we still want to. I'm wondering, like, do you still start with communication, or do you kind of address the deeper issues first, and can the communication, struggles be addressed first and helped with first before going deeper?
Usually, if I see that there are a lot of problems in the communication, then I start with some psychoeducation about that, because often when they come, the most urgent problem is the bickering and the quarreling and the discussion. So I think it is helpful for them to lower the the quarreling, because the fighting, before we can address other issues, and it helps actually to
Mm-hmm.
reduce the conflict so that then we can address the deeper issues.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Right, because in order for us to go deeper, we need to create safety. And it's hard to create safety when there's a hostile communication style, right? So in
Yes.
order, it's hard to imagine that we can go deeper and address like deeper, more vulnerable parts when there's no like deep, like listening ability to listen to each other. So it kind of makes
Yes.
sense that this is like, it's a surface level, but it's an important level to address.
Yes, it is an important thing to address, also because there has to be trust, and it cannot really be, when you have two people fighting, and one is in a critical position and one is in the defensive position. It's not really communication. It's just
Mhm.
two people having the same argument over and over and over, and it could be about things that are very silly, like how to load the dishwasher, or about the socks on the floor,
Mhm.
but it's clear that the issues are much deeper than that.
Mhm.
But I think that it's good to use the material that they bring. So if they had
Mhm.
a big fight about the dishwasher, I think it makes sense to go where they are and start from there.
Mhm.
And to
Mhm.
make sure that they can actually express their needs in an effective way, in a way that the
Right.
other person can hear.
Right. Right. And so this is a good example that you gave. I wonder if because you mentioned there are four, right? Most common. You
Yeah,
call
there
them
are
force.
four. The four horsemen of the apocalypse, as John
Apocalypse.
Gottman calls them, because there are four mistakes that are quite common, and he calls them the four horsemen of the apocalypse because when they show up, they kind of announce that the end is near.
The end of the relationship.
The end of the end of the emotional connection, the end of the relationship. So they're really important. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And the first one is the critical position, which is John Gottman has studied that usually women tend to bring up an issue. It's not always the case, but in general, this is more true in an heterosexual couple, of course. The way the issue is brought up can be harsh. And John Gottman has said, has studied that when the beginning of the conversation is harsh, it is very, very likely that the conversation is not going to go very well. Which I think seems intuitive. It makes sense, but in reality is also very hard to do because usually, you know, you see things that you don't like, right?
Right.
And you try not to say anything for some time.
Right.
And as I was saying, it builds up. And also, as I was saying, we don't really have the tools. We are not taught, you know, how to express our needs, how to complain, because of course, in a relationship, there will always be some complaints because there's never a 100% match. So we have some complaints and we want a way to express them without insulting the other person, of course. But also we want to be heard, because the bottom line, what we really want to get is we want our complaint to be listened to, and we want to solve the problem eventually.
Right. And once we're critical, we reduce our chances of that, right? Because the critical position will trigger defensiveness on the other side. Absolutely. And once the person is defended, they are not able to hear us because they already like protecting themselves. So it becomes a lose-lose situation. So I do agree with you. That's so important to learn. And yes, women have a more, you know, the more I've seen that as in my experience as well, where they speak out and they complain about the issue, but they complain with already built up resentment and maybe pain from that need not being met for so long. So they already have a lot of feelings about it. And so it comes out critical or blaming, or like you never like, look what you're doing. You always do this, and I'm so tired of this.
And of course, then the answer is, it's not true that I never do it, you know, last Tuesday. Right. And then it becomes, you know, a fight about, you know, what percentage of the times, you know, it's not true that I'm always late. Last Tuesday I was on time, and oh yes, but then yesterday you were late. And then that's the typical fight that gets you nowhere.
Right. And that's a factual, like people are fighting about content, but it's really they both feeling heard and that there's a lot going on deeper. But we can start with, okay, the fight was started with a critical position, right? And that's so the horseman
is the critical position, because it makes for a very harsh start. And you know, it starts already with an attack, a critique. And so it's very likely that it's not gonna go well. And the other person, it doesn't really hear the complaint and the protest that is masked underneath the critical position, but hears only, I need to defend myself. This is an attack. And so the communication is not really going. It is not really happening. It's going nowhere. Exactly. And so I think that it's important to learn how to start in a non-aggressive, non-critical, and non-harsh way. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's a soft start.
And that's
Right?
a skill that we teach in therapy, right? The
Yes,
soft
the soft
start.
start. It's the
Mm-hmm.
antidote for the critical position.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And that would be, would you give an example of a sort stars? Or I can, like, the hard start would be like, I can't believe you didn't unload the dishwasher again, or you put your dirty socks on the floor. I'm always
Okay.
cleaning. I'm so tired. You're not paying attention to my needs. And
Yes.
so it goes. So,
So yes, let's do a soft startup. But first, let's also remind that one should avoid words like never and always, because they
yes.
really trigger the defensiveness, because
Mhm.
nobody wants to admit that they never do this and they always do
Mhm.
that, and they can always come up with some examples, and then again it's a fight about the details that are not really relevant.
Yes.
So let's come up with the soft start for, you always leave your socks on the floor. We talked about this 100 times, right?
Yeah.
Classic.
Yeah.
So the word always should not, should be avoided, right?
Mhm.
But so the reason, anybody can see that this complaint presented this way is going nowhere, because the other, it basically means it's an attack, because it means you are lazy, you're selfish,
Right.
you don't care
You don't
about
listen.
me, you don't
Mhm.
listen, you don't care about what I tell you,
Yeah.
you don't care about us, right?
Right.
So the gentle startup has different parts. So the first part, you describe the situation without being judgmental.
Mhm.
So when I come home after a day of work and I see your dirty socks on the floor, so this is a description that is detailed, that has no judgment, right?
Mhm.
It's just the
Mhm.
facts, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
So this is the first part. And then the second part is I feel. And
Mhm.
this is an I statement, which is really different from the you statement. The you statements sound very critical, right?
Yeah.
Because they are accusations, basically. You are doing this, you are
Right.
guilty, basically.
Yes.
But it's I feel. So when I come home after work and I see your dirty socks on the floor, I feel disrespected, for example. So it puts the attention on how I feel,
Mhm. Mhm.
which so there's nothing really to argue, because it's how I feel.
Right, right. And I remember in nonviolent communication, it goes even, they even, they say like, don't even use words like disrespected, because the other person might hear like, I don't, not disrespectful. So they go even further deeper, which is not always available to us, but they sort of
Yeah.
just remember that they say, I'm feeling really sad or something, some
Or
primal
hurt.
emotion or hurt. Yeah. So
Yes.
using like more deeper emotion, like basically going to the level of vulnerability that's available to you.
Yes.
Because even if you say I feel neglected or I feel disrespected or I feel not seen, the other person just hears that, oh,
Yeah.
you don't feel like I see you. But of course, not always available. But if it's available, that's like
Absolutely. It's good.
that's the
Yeah, no, you're
that.
right. You're right. It's just that to get to that depth, I don't think it happens at the beginning of,
No,
it takes some
definitely.
time, because also it means to be vulnerable,
And be in
right?
touch with
Because
your emotion and have safety
yes,
in relationships. So it's, yeah,
yes,
it's like top level when you're already aware of what you're feeling and you completely, there's some safety established. So not always available. So we
yes.
start with what's available.
Yeah, we start with maybe we start with I feel sad. Yes, it's a good one, because sad is pretty I think it's an easy emotion, right? It's easier to admit that you are sad than or angry. I think
Or
it's
angry.
easier than to say I'm scared or I feel abandoned or I feel that those are
Yeah, that's a
much more
that's very
vulnerable.
deep. Yeah, yeah. So it makes me sad or makes me angry or makes me frustrated. So something to
Yes,
do
I feel
with that.
that. I feel frustrated. And then the third part is the need or the wish that is behind the the critical thing. So because I mean, of course, behind every protest there is a request, right? So and then at that point you can say, I really would like, or how can I help you to remember to put the socks on in the dirty laundry basket, or, I really would like you to remember to help me with that.
Right. So stating your needs.
Stating your need, yes, and the request, because there is a request.
Right.
And
Right.
that also at times I mean, at the beginning, it's hard also to find. Some people have also a hard time finding the request in there, because also that requires some awareness of your own needs,
Needs.
right? As you
Yes.
were saying,
Yes.
but it also requires the ability, not only the ability, but also you need to feel safe so that you can be vulnerable, right?
Yeah, because expressing the need can be very vulnerable, because how many of us didn't have our needs met, and every time we express a need we feel the pain, unconsciously a lot of times, but we feel blocked in asking for what we need. So that can be also requires some therapy work to get there, right?
Yes.
But the level that's available to you, you're feeling like it's really important not to have dirty socks on the floor, and your request is not to have them, right? That could be a request.
Yes, or another classic example that I hear often is you are always on your phone, right? Or you work too much, and the request there, I miss you, right?
Yeah.
I want to spend more time with you,
Right.
but it's not so immediate at the beginning. It requires a little bit of
It's more
think,
vulnerable as well, because it's
thinking.
accessing the pain from not having that quality time, right? Somebody isn't available,
Yes.
which again can trigger childhood stuff, but we're not go there today. We stay with the communication.
Yes, and one is always afraid that, okay, now that I said that, then nothing is going to change, and then it's even worse, right? Because
I asked and I didn't
because it's
receive it.
much easier just to blame the other person than to have access to those needs and to those feelings
And take a risk
and
to
take the
ask,
risk.
because
Exactly.
asking is a risk, because the person might say no, and it's hurtful.
Yes. Absolutely. And so so this is the first horseman, and the antidote is a soft start. But as you were pointing out, often when there is a harsh startup, the other person gets defensive, and that's the second horseman, is the defensive position. That is a little bit what I was saying earlier, that if somebody says you're always late, you say no, last Tuesday and so, and this is one way of, you're defending yourself. You're not
Right.
really hearing the you're not even hearing the critical but you actually you're
Taking it
defending,
personal. Yeah, you
you're
defend.
taking it personally.
I'm just thinking it can be really helpful to talk about this when we say we work with individual, and like say their partner doesn't want to come to therapy, and they feel really, and they cannot change the critical horse, right? The horseman that's just gonna stay, and they need something to change on their part. And their
Yes.
pattern is defensiveness, and that's how they can feel more empowered to do something about communication while changing their response, even
Yes.
though they cannot change the start. The start is going to continue to be harsh, but what
Yes.
can they do to change their defensiveness, and they take responsibility for their part, their contribution?
Or the opposite, you're working with an individual that often does a lot of harsh startups, then you can work with that person to say, okay, this is not working.
Right,
And
right.
right, this is not working. So you need to communicate your needs in a more effective way.
Yeah, makes sense. So it's just sometimes people come and say, well, I cannot do anything because my partner doesn't want to do therapy, but I don't want to change. And I say that if you start changing, then the relationship will inevitably will change. So there's a lot you can do on your side. We don't know where it's going to lead because we can't control, what's going to
Yes,
happen. But you can
absolutely.
certainly work on something from your side. So what can a person do if they always, when they in the defensive role, when they start, like, once they hear the harsh start, they're already like defending and protecting their
Yes.
position?
Yes. And if the horsemen have been present for some time, it could take time to break that negative cycle, because
Mm-hmm.
even though at times when the start of the conversation is soft and gentle, the other person is hearing it harsh because they are so used to having a harsh startup. Then it
Mm-hmm.
takes some time to break that negative loop.
Yeah, they're already defensive before the conversation starts, right? Like they're already
Yes.
like, as soon as they walk in the door, they're already like ready to defend themselves. They can be very
Yeah.
habitual, like.
Yeah. And it's also hard because, I mean, at times I've asked people to practice the soft startup in front of me, and at times all the words were correct, but the tone was very
Yeah,
right, was very, you can really hear the built up resentment
yeah,
that comes through, even from the tone of the voice,
yeah.
or so it requires some time for the cycle to.
The tone is so critical because it says more than the words, because, like, as babies we don't hear the words but we hear the tone, so we're very attuned to the tone. So, and it's sometimes very unconscious, right? Like we feel like we're saying the right thing, but it comes out
Yes.
so the tone is crucial.
And the emotion is there, because if a person is angry because the socks are on the floor,
Yeah, yeah,
over, every day, right? The person is angry. And so, as you said, the emotion is clear. I mean,
yeah, yeah.
and the other person
So
picks it up.
yeah, so it's helpful if we have emotional intelligence and can monitor our emotions, but that's helpful, right? Because then we can breathe through the anger, do something with the anger, and then address our partner in a calmer state. And that's why then it's softer start.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
if we're angry and we're trying to control it and we're trying to communicate very properly, it's still gonna, it's still there. It's still gonna come out.
Yes.
So
And as we know, I mean, people come to couples therapy after, on average, like 6 years of having
yeah,
problems. So there is a lot of built up resentment usually, right?
yeah, yeah.
So
It's hard. It's hard.
it's hard.
It's
Yes.
a, it's a hard. Couples therapy is really hard because people don't come when it's time. They come much later, unfortunately.
Yes. 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 And so, I mean, when they come and they say, we have a communication problem, okay, at least there are no major disasters that have occurred, right?
Yeah,
But
Usually there's build up emotions already.
Yes, but still, it's still hard because you have this, they expect this, these problems. They expect the critical position. They expect the defensive position, right? And so it's hard to break the cycle. So we were saying the defensive position. Another example of defensiveness can be when the person says, well, but you do it too.
Yeah.
Right. That's also a classic.
That's classic.
Yes, I'm late. Yes, but you do it too. That's
yes. That's like a block right there. It's like it's sort of like devaluing the emotion too. It's like yes, but right, like yes, but you do it too, and so you don't have a right to feel upset about this because you also do it.
Yes.
So it's kind of blocks the communication.
Yeah, because then again, we're arguing about, yes, but I did it because you did it. No, but you did it first, right? And then it's going nowhere, right?
Yeah. So what would be some skill that you teach a person then?
Well, the antidote is really to you assume your own responsibility for whatever, even if there is a small part of truth in what the other person is saying, to take responsibility for that, even for that small part. And and it's tough because at times I find myself saying, okay, yes, but the bottom line is there a grain of truth in what, your partner is saying? And they're like, yes. Okay, so then you agree that, your partner has a point in there. Because at times I realize that we're really, really skillful at debating, right? We want to be right. We want to debate at times. Certain people in particular enjoy that, right? And so it's hard to...
They become like a power struggle, right? Like
it becomes like a power struggle.
Like
yes.
Somebody needs to be right and more powerful, like...
Yes. And the purpose is not, what is the percentage of, of me being late versus you being late, and how late. And, the bottom line is another, it's like, yes, I've been late at times and you're hurt because of this, and you miss me.
Yeah. So the person can take responsibility that they did put the dirty socks on the floor, right? Continue the analogy, and they can own it and say, yes, you're right. The dirty socks are on the floor, and I feel you, and I see you real upset, right? Or something, and like mirror that emotion, like, and I see you really angry or frustrated, like kind of reflect what they see. That could be really helpful, I can imagine, in an interaction like that.
Yes, so because you take responsibility, even if you don't agree completely, you take the responsibility, and already the other person can calm down a little bit and feel, okay, I'm being heard.
And they see me, and that's usually puts the defenses down. And sometimes, like, I find it hard when, like, say the couple, like, wants, they somebody needs to take a step into the direction of change, and when they stuck into waiting the other to change, that's a hard, like, deadlock, because they're both waiting. They're like, no, but you do this, you change your pattern, and then so somebody, sometimes it's hard.
No, it's at times this is the case when the startup is very harsh. It becomes very difficult for the other person to take responsibility.
Yeah.
And then nobody wants to, as you said, nobody wants to change, and I believe that they both need to change at the same time.
Yeah. That's most helpful.
Ideally.
Ideally, yes. Yeah.
Ideally.
It's like especially like you said, when we do, when couples come in and there's so much already built up emotion, and they so upset with each other and resentful, so they kind of holding on to those grudges, and they say, and like deep down inside they already don't feel like the person loves them, right? And they just want some little proof that like you changed and you show me that you love me, and the other person feels exactly the same way. And it's a hard place to be, because it's very little room to somebody to say to, okay, I really want to this relationship to work, and I'm willing to do something. So sometimes it takes a couple months to get to that place,
Yes, but it's true. I mean, the it's clear that the arguments are not about the socks. The question that is very often underneath is the one, I think Sue Johnson puts it very well when she's, the question is, are you there for me?
Yes.
Right?
And that's an attachment question.
Yes, that's an attachment question. Is like, okay, it's not really about the socks. It's right. Like, do you listen to me? Do you think I'm important to you enough? And do you care about me? Are you present and engaged emotionally?
Right. I mean, it's clearer for us therapists. I think for couples, sometimes it does feel like it's about the socks, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Or they come in and like, if we only solve this one issue, the dirty socks on the floor, we'll be okay, Yes. And they sometimes don't want to, they just want something simple solution to this, and you start to uncover it, and it's whole story. But
and at times you could solve the socks problem. You could give them the best, best idea of, put, a laundry basket with a huge sign that, and then, it wouldn't really solve the deeper issue that is, are you there for me? Do I matter to you?
Yeah.
Right?
So it doesn't really solve the issue.
Yes, because then from the socks, we're, the fight is going to become about something else. There's another issue.
The need is still unmet.
Yes. And also I think that, if there is a secure attachment, the fight about the socks, I mean, you can still fight about the socks, of course, and and because as we said, there's not 100% match always. So of course there are going to be things to complain about, but then it becomes really an argument, a fight about the socks, and it doesn't have that emotional urgency, that
charge,
that intensity that it has. If I think, here we are again, once again, you are not listening to what I say because you don't care about us.
Yeah, exactly. And they usually don't come to therapy because of that, because they think, it's less charged, that they can figure it out, usually, if it's not the deeper issue.
Yeah, and the other person thinks, here we go again, another thing that I'm not doing right.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And no matter how I tried, is never gonna be good enough.
Yeah.
Right.
And I failed, and I'm rejected.
And I faced. And that leads you to the third horseman, right?
Yeah, perfect.
Which is the stonewalling, right?
Stonewalling.
In the stonewalling, like that, that it could be, I'm checking out, basically. I'm no longer listening. I'm no longer, either I could, it could be like somebody that walks out of the room, or it could be somebody that stops listening. And then and then of course it's really painful for the other person that instead would like to keep the conversation going and really feels abandoned.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Really feels abandoned.
Yeah. Is it related? Does it have a pair for the fourth? Can we mention the fourth too? It's a
Sure.
separate.
It's contempt. It's
Oh,
contempt.
contempt.
So it's it could be sarcasm. It could be it's really the most dangerous of the four.
Mm,
And it really sends the message, I'm better than you.
mm, wow.
And
Yeah, that's.
it's really painful. It's really painful. And the
Mm-hmm.
antidote, it's really to counteract the contempt with affection and gratitude, because you realize that there are different lifestyles, different ways of doing things, and it's not really about which one is best.
Right, right.
And
So both, it seems like both, yeah, contempt and, I mean, contempt can be also be subtle, right? So it's, and the other person, sometimes when you, sometimes, I guess it's both with Stonewall and contempt, like some person, like people might not be aware, right? And they're like, they start disengaging and stonewalling, but they're not aware. They sort of feel like they're just protecting themselves, and the other person feels the withdrawal and then says, well, you're doing this again, you're withdrawing, are you here, you're listening, and the other person can be like, what, I'm here, I'm listening, but they're not, and so it's very,
yes,
like the other person feels also kind of gaslighted,
yeah,
they don't
yes.
know if they can trust themselves, because they, so it's like, it's some things are like beyond level of our awareness, right?
Yes, yes. And we didn't mention the antidote of
Yeah, Stonewall, yeah.
which is really to, when you feel that you are overwhelmed and you're no longer able to have a productive conversation,
Right.
then it's better to take a break, to take a
Mm-hmm.
time out. However, it's really important that when you take the time out, you make it clear that you're not disregarding the issue, you're not leaving because you don't want to ever talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to make it very clear that you need to take a break, but we can talk about, for example, we can talk about this later after dinner tonight, after we put the kids to
Mm-hmm.
bed.
Right.
And then it's the responsibility of the person who asked for the timeout to approach the other person and
Mm-hmm.
continue the conversation, so that the other
Mm-hmm.
person doesn't feel really abandoned and um, this
Left out,
missed. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right.
Yeah, and I can imagine, because stonewalling is sort of like a defense, right? A person can start feeling overwhelmed with the feelings, and so it's like they withdraw, just disconnect, disengage, and when again in therapy they become more aware of that, they can name it, and when it happens in the moment they can communicate it to the partner, that's like, hey, it's not about you, I'm just feeling overwhelmed and I losing my abilities to stay in the contact.
Mm-hmm.
I need some time to regulate, right, to
Yes,
self-regulate, and
yes,
and the partner then doesn't feel left out in the cold, it feels they communicate it, and so they understand and it's less painful. So that's like, seems like a good antidote, again with the socks on the floor. Maybe the person comes in and feeling overwhelmed with the request, of feeling very criticized, feeling very low self-worth, of feeling like they failed again, and they starting
yes,
getting flooded, so they can say, okay, wait a second, I'm just getting really triggered right now, I need some time, let's talk after I'm feeling a little better with this. And then they come back to the partner, like you said, once they feeling better.
yes. And I mean, and it's really important that, I mean, that the other person doesn't feel that, you know, because often the stonewalling confirms a little bit the idea that, oh, you know, the other person doesn't care, like he or she is selfish and only, you know, doesn't listen and only thinks about his needs or her needs, right? And the stonewall does it, you know, is perfect for confirming that, right? Because the other person leaves through. But so it's really important that they say, okay, I need, it's not that I don't care, you know, it's right now, this is not helpful, but, you know, we can talk about this tomorrow or later.
Right, perfect. And with contempt, so let's just maybe finish up with contempt, right? The final one, because it is very like harmful, right? Like, and again, I just feel like I do it sometimes, but I'm not aware of it, right? Like in a moment, it feels like, again, like a protection or something. Like if I'm feeling inferior, right? So there's a tendency to compensate by creating this like superiority. And again, it's sometimes
it's hurtful.
Unconscious. It's hurtful.
It's very hurtful.
Yeah, and it's hurtful for the partner then, because you're not in contact. You're just trying to, like, you know, you on top then, sort of.
Yes.
The top.
You don't put value. You really dismiss the other person.
Dismiss. Yeah, that's a good word.
You dismiss the other person. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, and I think that it is helpful, and I think it is helpful to know that these are tools that we can use to recognize them and to practice avoiding them.
And you said the antidote is gratitude and affection. Move from I'm trying to think, like an example would be like
like that you accept that there are different ways of loading the dishwasher
or dealing with the socks, right?
Yeah, or dealing with the socks. You maybe acknowledge that you know, maybe, you know, in the morning when there is a person is in a hurry, doesn't put the socks, but maybe in the evening, right? So because there are different ways of doing things.
Right. So it's sort of it can be like this contempt of, like, you're just a messy person and you make a mess in my clean house or something. Like, it is disdain to this house because you always ruin my perfect, I don't know, environment. So something like
that's also a classic, because often for women, the house doesn't just mean the house, but it means who I am as a person. And so if the house is clean and tidy, then it's a reflection of, you know, of who I am and what a good job I'm doing in life. So often you see this conflict where the meaning attached is much deeper than you know, a pair of dirty socks.
Yeah, that's a good exploration too, a deeper exploration. But it's very interesting to explore that contempt, right? Do you find that people easy to explore that? Like hardest. It seems like it's hard to work with somehow.
Contempt.
Yeah, or it's like the person's not aware of it and just, you know.
Yeah, I think that it's true that at times with the people that we love the most, we say things that we would not say to friends or to strangers, because and that's a problem, because it is very hurtful. But if the person that you love is saying, you know, in a sense, I'm better than you,
Mhm.
That's even more hurtful than if a stranger on the street would
Mhm.
say
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
So this is a little bit of a problem, I think,
Mhm.
when you have, in a sense, you take liberties with the people that you love that you wouldn't with other
Right.
people.
Yeah, your shadow really comes out, right? Your shadow aspects a lot of times.
Yeah, and it really damages the quality of the relationship.
Yeah.
And as Esther Perel always says, is like the quality of your life depends on the quality of your relationships.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So
Well, I love that. Love Esther
yes.
Perel. Well, we've been talking for almost 50 minutes. So this has been a juicy discussion. I certainly, put like some structure to what I do with communication skills. So thank you so much. I don't know if it's anything to end, or I hope that this has been useful for whoever's listening to this.
Thank
But
you for
yeah,
having me.
thank you so much. That's been so useful even for me to learn, honestly. So I'm
I'm
sure it's
glad.
gonna be. And again, this is Federica, psychologist from Italy, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed
Thank
this.
you. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.